that ESPN has demoted Doris Burke in a
Hmm.
surprise move. ABC ESPN has demoted Hall of Famer Doris Burke from its NBA Finals team and promoted longtime network commentator Tim Legler to its number one team. Sources briefed on the decision told The Athletic on Thursday. Legler will pair with longtime lead play by play man Mike Breen and Richard Jefferson
Hmm.
for the NBA Finals. Richard Jefferson, Tim Legler, and Mike Breen. Doris Burke gets promoted. The Peter Principal gets promoted to her level of incompetence and gets run out. Your thoughts?
Wow. That last part, Jason, it wasn't that long ago. You were a fan of Doris Burke.
I was.
I mean, yeah, was. I mean, I can't believe that came out of your mouth. I mean, I knew you were down on her, and look, we've been tough on her. We like, but we're like Joe Cortez, the boxing referee. We're firm, but we're fair. This could be good for her. I think it's certainly good for the audience. She played a specific role. She was generally much more well liked in that role. If they give her back to that role, less can be more for Doris Burke.
Everybody, including me, love Doris Burke as basically the third or second best. She get the second, third best games on ESPN's NBA coverage. Everybody loved her there. We knew we weren't getting Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson, but as a change of pace on lower tier NBA games, everybody loved her. They, ESPN, being filled up on DEI, promoted her to the number one job where expectations elevate, and she got exposed and it sucked, and it's like, hey man, this isn't as good as Van Gundy and Mark Jackson. And that is I don't know if this reorganization is going to work for Doris Burke, and I'm not sure it's going to work for Rich Jefferson and Tim Legler. They may have just put Tim Legler in a losing
Mm.
position because Legler and Richard Jefferson, that's not going to be as good as Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson either. It doesn't sound like a number one team to me. This sound, Tim Legler was a spot up shooter in the NBA, and Richard Jefferson was probably on a good team the fourth best
Yeah.
player, and maybe at some point he was the third best player on some teams. Richard Jefferson was a good player, but just didn't have the gravitas. I don't think that Jackson and Van Gundy had. Your reaction to that?
Well, okay. That last part, was Mark Jackson ever really the best player or the second best player on any team that he played on? And he was a very good pro.
He led the league in assists, I would bet, a couple
Yeah.
years.
All right, but did you ever think of him in the same class of Isaiah, John
No,
Stockton? I
no,
mean,
no.
I believe that the strength
Hold,
of
hold for
that
one
team
second, though.
you
Hold for
mentioned.
1 second. Hold for one
Yeah.
second. Let's say, as a player, you're right about Mark Jackson, but he got added gravitas from being a head coach of the Golden State Warriors and being a part of the birth of Steph Curry
Yeah.
and Klay Thompson.
Right. And I believe that the strength of that trio, their version of Run DMC, you know what? They had unbelievable chemistry. And you could have that with two Hall of Famers or two guys that were just solid players or role players. And Mike Breen was the great traffic cop to that team, right? I think in television or in radio, you cannot manufacture chemistry. You either have it or you don't. And the thing that I did enjoy about those guys is the way that Van Gundy and Jackson, they'd contradict each other. They'd get heated, but you always kind of knew they were winking and nodding like, hey, we're having a good time here. They had their own little catchphrases and it worked. To this day, Jason, I don't understand why ABC ever tried to fix something that was not broken.
I think, and this is I'm speculation. I don't know how confident I am in this speculation, but I think they wanted to get rid of Mark Jackson because of his Christian values,
Mm,
and they couldn't get rid of Jackson without getting rid of Van Gundy
mm.
because then they would appear
The
racist.
white, black.
And that's what I think happened.
Yeah, and by the way, this is interesting. So the new team at ABC for the #1 games, male, male, male. Jason, they're not checking all the boxes here.
They'll have sideline reporters
Well,
galore.
but that's always female, though. That's generally female, though. Come on.
Well, I mean, that's what they're going to do.
Okay.
All right. There's some news and notes in the sports media landscape. Cam Newton gets a new deal with First Take and ESPN. And I'm going to mention this, but we won't talk about it for a couple of minutes before we get to it. Skip Bayless is partnering with Gilbert Arenas, Aqib Talib, and Jay Gruden for some sort of football podcast on Arenas' network. But I want to start with Cam Newton because I saw this video Cam put out where he ends up praising Stephen A. Smith and all these guys. And it struck me perhaps differently than it would strike others. Let's play the clip and then I'll react.
Everybody has an opportunity to make their honest opinion in their critique.
Whether you played or not.
Whether you played or not.
So how is it justified or how is it respected?
It's justified of what point and what critique you're talking about. People who I admire in sports, Stephen A. Smith, Colin Cowherd, Dan Patrick, individuals like Emmanuel Acho, who is a former athlete, Nick Wright, and another person that I heavily study with all those guys that I just go back and I watch and I see how their wordplay is patternized, Max Kellerman. All these individuals may not have had the illustrious career of a Tom Brady, of a Brett Favre, of a Patrick Mahomes, but when they speak, you just kind of, hold on, what did he say? I ain't even think about that. What point are you making? And now when you come into their field, you still have to answer the question, what point are you making, Cam? What point are you making, athlete? Because that right there is going to be how you're judged in this space and if you are taken serious. And I've always said that every single thing that I've ever said in any type of platform was speaking into the mic. It may not be the popular pick, but it always will, and it always will stay backed by merit and logic to what I deem it to be. Because it's still opinions.
So Cam, to me, has some broadcasting personality and talent, but Cam also is another one of these athletes that handled his life and money so poorly that he still doesn't have the freedom to be honest. Because if you honestly believe Cam is sitting around, oh yeah, Colin Cowherd, Dan Patrick, Stephen A. Smith, Nick Wright, man, these are all guys I respect, and they all, I think Colin Cowherd is clever and a very talented broadcaster and host. Dan Patrick's a great interviewer, or was at one point, probably still is. I'm not sure, but. Other than Cowherd, I'm not sure if any of these people ever say anything all that interesting or provocative, and Cam is just saying this because he desperately needs a broadcasting career. He mishandled his personal life, too many baby mamas, wasted too much money on clothes and just what athletes and young people do, blowing their money. And so he's still not free to be honest. And so good, happy for Cam. He's got a job with First Take. I'm not sure he's going to be all that interesting with his opinions, with his appearance, with his delivery. I do think he will have an impact in the sports media world, but he's going to be another dishonest or someone afraid to say what they really, really think.
Help us grow the Fearless Army. Pound that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with all your fearless friends.